When the elementary school counselor asked the question, "How many decisions have you made today?" most people were answering with very small numbers, such as 5. But I had to be that one kid who said something like 10 trillion. This sounds ridiculous, but was I really that far off? First, we have to define the word decision, which is a lot harder than it sounds. Some questions about the word have to be answered, such as whether or not a decision has to be made consciously. According to the Oxford Dictionary, the definition of a decision is a conclusion or resolution reached after consideration. The Webster definition is very similar, a choice that you make about something after thinking about it, the result of deciding. The thinking about it part would probably imply that a decision has to be made consciously, but Dictionary.com's definition is the act or process of deciding, determination, as of a question or doubt by making a judgment. This doesn't necessarily mention after thinking about it, which means that according to this definition, a decision doesn't really have to be conscious. This question is just as much about language as it is psychology. Language evolves over time and doesn't necessarily have absolute definitions. The answer to this question will be different depending on your own interpretation of the word decision. For this video, I will personally define decision as a course of action taken, but depending on your own personal view, it may or may not have to be conscious. The number of conscious decisions that you make in a day is probably easier to calculate than the number of unconscious decisions you make. The only problem is defining where the cutoff is between a conscious and unconscious decision. While consciousness is definitely an amazing mystery of the human brain, the subconscious mind is also very remarkable. When you first learn an activity, it takes a lot of conscious attention in the cortex. But as you get better, other regions of the brain can take control, leaving your cortex mostly free. This allows you to go on a type of autopilot, where you can think about other things or simply think about nothing at all. There are a lot of great examples of this happening. It is really amazing what your brain's autopilot is capable of. Some of these activities include walking, biking, driving, typing, etc. Tasks such as typing really fast may seem incomprehensible to the conscious part of the brain, yet most people can still do it effortlessly without putting much thought into it. A study was conducted about the brain's autopilot where a sign was placed in the middle of a walkway. Every single person who walked by was successfully able to avoid it. However, many people, especially on cell phones, did not recall avoiding the obstacle. It is actually amazing how much of your day you spend on this autopilot. Think about all the things you do without really thinking about it. Many classic decisions, such as getting up to throw something away when you're done with it, are made without much conscious thought at all. Simple tasks such as walking are actually extremely complex. Robots such as Atlas are just starting to be able to walk as well as we do. There are a lot of calculations going on in your brain just to do something simple such as walking without falling over that you are not aware of. Many of them would not be considered classic decisions, but the problem with answering the question, how many conscious decisions do you make in a day, is that there is no line between conscious and subconscious actions. Is walking across the room one decision or many? Is every word you say a decision? And is typing that word one decision or many? Even if you do consider it to be a decision, what if the word is something like the that you put in front of a noun naturally? Then is that a decision? Despite all of these complications, there is a claim circulating the internet that the average person makes about 35,000 decisions in a day, with at least putting some conscious thought into them. However, the original source of this statistic cannot be found, since there are about 86,400 seconds in a day, and the average American spends about 24,480 seconds or about 6.8 hours sleeping. If this number is correct, then the average person makes a conscious decision about once every 1.8 waking seconds. This number is most likely an estimate and cannot be verified, but it is still the best number that can be found. It is nearly impossible to tell the number of conscious decisions made in a day. It depends on where you draw the line between a conscious and subconscious decision, since multiple parts of the brain can be working on the same task. Since we cannot put an exact number on conscious decisions, how many subconscious decisions are made in a day? Defining a decision for subconscious activities is extremely difficult. I personally defined a decision as a course of action being taken. Technically, a brain synapse firing would be a course of action and something the brain decided to do. A synapse is simply a connection between different neurons. It is estimated that there are about 86 billion neurons in the human brain, and each neuron has about 1,000 to 10,000 synapses connecting it to other neurons. Figuring out the synaptic firing rate of the brain is extremely difficult since there are so many variables and it is extremely complex. But Astra Bryant from Stanford was asked and did a calculation to come up with a very rough estimate. It would be simpler to start out by figuring out the firing rate of neurons in the brain. The firing rate of a neuron varies a lot depending on where it is in the brain and what you are doing at the moment. It would possibly vary between 1 and 200 times per second. This means that there would be 86 billion neurons in total, and the firing rate would be 86 billion to 17.2 trillion times per second. For the synaptic firing rate, a similar calculation can be done. It has been estimated that there are a minimum of 100 trillion synapses in the brain. Assuming that a neuron firing will make a synapse fire, which is definitely not the case, but it will make the calculation easier. This means that 100 trillion to 20 quadrillion synapses will fire per second. Going with the low end of this estimate multiplied by 86,400 seconds in a day will give us a staggering number of 8 quintillion, 640 quadrillion decisions per day. All while only using 20 watts, or about the power of a dim light bulb. To put that into perspective, one of the world's most powerful supercomputers used 82,944 processors and about a petabyte of system memory to model 1 second of 1% of the human brain. This simulation took about 40 minutes. Keep in mind that this supercomputer is massive and uses enough power to run a town. Your brain fits in your head and uses less energy than a regular light bulb. Computers may seem very fast, and they definitely are at things such as math, but there are many things that they aren't very good at, even though they are getting much better. This is a pen, and you probably can recognize it, and it is different from this pencil. A 5-year-old could probably tell you that, but programming a computer to tell the difference is very difficult. You can also communicate with language, which seems very simple, but it is extremely difficult for a computer. Lastly, you can think for yourself and make complex decisions, which is yet another thing that is very difficult for a computer to do. 8 quintillion, 640 quadrillion is a number so big that it is incomprehensible, but it is a number produced by your own brain. To put it simply, your brain cannot comprehend itself. Depending on your interpretation of the word decision, you can make anywhere between a few and 8 quintillion 640 quadrillion decisions per day. Choose wisely.